Happy Sabbath! Good morning! We would like to welcome you as we worship together as the Pasco Riverview Church family. This morning we have asked Gianna and Catalina if they would open us with prayer. Gianna?
Dear Jesus, thank you for this day. Fill us with the Holy Spirit. Please be with us and people for all the people who are gathered in the
Amen. Catalina, would you like to pray too? Okay, pray loud. Pray loud. Ready? Pray loud. Amen. Happy Sabbath.
Good morning. Welcome to Children's Story. So I have a story to tell this morning about sheep. I didn't grow up with sheep, but Molly's daddy grew up around sheep. My mother-in-law, during my time knowing her, has had up to 40 sheep at one time, which seems like a lot of sheep to me. And every night, she goes out and counts the sheep. When I've had to go and help her count the sheep, every time she has to tell me, I go to her and I say, okay, how many sheep are there again? And she says, there are 40 sheep. 40 sheep. And I'll say, okay, I can remember 40 sheep. And I get out there and I start counting. 1, 2, 3, and they move. Sheep don't hold still while you count them. And so sometimes I have to start over, and I'll look at one and I'll think, did I count that one? All the sheep kind of look the same to me. And so there have been a couple times I just come back inside and they keep going around the wall. They're not sitting still. I can't tell how many there are. And she says, that's okay. She says, I will come out and help you. And she's named all of her sheep. They're all special to her. She can always remember if she's counted each one. And sometimes even without counting them, she looks at them and she says, oh, one is missing. Do you know what she does when there's a missing sheep? She usually gets on a four-wheeler. Sometimes she walks around the fences, but there's a lot of fences, so she usually gets on a four-wheeler and she goes out along all the fences to see if there's a sheep stuck in the fence, or if there's a hole in the fence, or if she can see any coyotes or cougars nearby, or if she can see any footprints of coyotes or cougars nearby. And there have been some times when there was a missing sheep and she looked for that sheep for hours and hours. And I said, oh, I am tired. I gotta go to bed. I can't stay up looking for sheep. And she says, that's okay. You go to bed. I just can't go to bed until I know what happened to my sheep. And this reminds me of something, because there is a story in the Bible. In the book of Luke, it says that Jesus told us that we are like his sheep. It says that every one of us is special to Jesus, and that if he had 100 sheep and just one got lost, it's not just another sheep. It's not like when I go and count the sheep and I count them and I can't tell if I'm counting the same one again. Jesus says, I know each sheep. He has names for each person, just like Omi has names for every one of her sheep. They're all special to her, and we are all special to God. We are not just one other person. We are a special person, a special sheep to God. And he knows when one of us is missing, and he says when one of us comes back, when he's found that one sheep that he spent all night looking for, and that he's waited and waited and waited for that sheep to come home, that it's even more special than when the 99 sheep are already at home waiting in the barn. So I want you to remember that Jesus loves you and we're each special. Happy Sabbath.
Well, happy Sabbath, everyone. We really, really miss every one of you, and we cannot wait to be able to actually not just look at the pews, but actually look at each one of you pretty soon. So we're going to sing some songs, and Dean and I just been learning new songs like usual. And of course, we are going to sing a new song this morning. And, well, I don't know how new it is. Is it new for you? All right, well, we actually were going to have the words up for you guys, but we didn't have internet this morning in the church, and sorry. It's called I Have a Maker. I have a maker. He formed my heart before even time began.
My life was in His
hands. He knows my name. He knows my every thought.
He sees each tear that falls, and He hears me when I call.
I have a Father. He calls me His own. He'll never leave me,
No
no matter where I go. He knows my name. He knows my every thought. He sees each tear that falls,
and He
hears me when I call. He knows my name. He knows my every thought. He sees each tear that falls, and He hears me when I call.
He hears me when I
call.
He hears me when I call.
Not bad.
We made it through it. It's great. Our next song, Wonderful, Merciful Savior.
Wonderful, merciful Savior, precious Redeemer and friend, who would have thought that a lamb could rescue the souls of men? Oh, you rescue the souls of men. You are the one that we praise. You are the one we adore. You give the healing and grace our hearts always hunger for. Oh, our hearts always hunger for. Counselor, Comforter, Keeper, Spirit we long to embrace. So now we're going to sing number 100, but I need to come and get it over here. And I hope you guys are enjoying our songs that we picked this morning. Great is thy faithfulness. I need to get it in a bigger one here.
This one you should know, so please sing at home. We can't hear you, but we would like you to sing.
Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever wilt be. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses above, join with all nature in manifold witness to thy great faithfulness, mercy, and love. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Pardon for sin and mysteries that endureth, thine own dear presence to cheer and to guide, strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Wow, what a promise. Amen.
It's fantastic.
last hymn, or it's not a hymn, it's actually one of my favorite little choruses that I love singing, and I always make Dean learn all these songs. But it's got the most beautiful words.
It's good for me.
Yes. It's called With All I Am. And just so you know, I'm going to read you guys. Into your hands I commit again. With all I am for you, Lord. You hold my world in the palm of your hands, and I am yours forever. That is my prayer this morning for you all.
Into your hands I commit again, with all I am for you, Lord. You hold my world in the palm of your hands, and I am yours forever. Jesus, I believe in you. Jesus, I belong to you. You're the reason that I live, the reason that I sing, with all I am. I walk with you wherever you go, through tears and joys. I'll trust in you, and I will live in all of your ways and your promises forever. Jesus, I believe in you. Jesus, I belong to you. You're the reason that I live, the reason that I sing, with all I am. Worship, I will worship you. I will worship. I will worship you. I will worship. I will worship you. I will worship. I will worship you. Jesus, I believe in you. Jesus, I belong to you. You're the reason that I live, the reason that I sing. Jesus, I believe in you. Jesus, I belong to you. You're the reason that I live, the reason that I sing, with all I am.
Amen. Have a fantastic Sabbath.
Chronic diseases such as heart disease, cancer, stroke, and diabetes are responsible for 7 of 10 deaths among Americans each year and account for 75% of the nation's health spending. Although sometimes related to economic, social, and physical factors, more often it's behaviors such as tobacco use, poor diet, physical inactivity, and alcohol abuse that lead to poor health and contribute to chronic disease. That's a fact. But there's hope. A focus on prevention in our families, churches, schools, and communities will not only improve the health of Americans, but also save a lot of money. A report from Trust for America's Health concluded that investing $10 per person per year in proven community-based programs that promote a healthier lifestyle could save the country more than $16 billion annually within 5 years. So let's live a longer and healthier life and save some cash.
Have you ever noticed that there are some promises that we just know we won't be able to keep by our own strength? Like, how many times have you tried going to the gym or started a new diet? You see, the problem may not be the promise itself, but the human heart, which is naturally unstable and deceiving. Jeremiah 17:9. The human heart is naturally inclined to do bad things. On the other hand, good things, like being faithful to your spouse, keeping the Sabbath, eating healthy food, or returning the tithe and giving promise, for instance, will seldom happen spontaneously. So when you make a vow, following God's word and having Him as witness, you are testifying that you would no longer like to follow the dictates of your natural heart. You are saying that you would like to do what is commanded by His word and what is right in His sight. And even though you recognize that without the Lord you can do nothing, you also recognize that God is the one who works in you both to will and to do for His good pleasure. Philippians 2:13. So, to vow something to God will not only increase your desire to follow His word, but will also strengthen your dependency on His work in your life. As you return your tithe and your promise, renew your vow to return to God the tithe of everything that He would give you. May we put our desires last and God first.
Dietrich Buxtehude was a prominent Baroque composer who lived from 1637 to 1707. Though born in Sweden, he spent much of his life in Germany. During his life, Central Europe was devastated by the 30 Years' War. Over 8 million people died from the conflict, hunger, and disease. It was during this time that Buxtehude penned this song of hope. May its text bring you comfort in our time of trouble as well.
Happy Sabbath. Today's scripture is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the thoughts that I think towards you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope.
Good morning and happy Sabbath. Again, we're so glad that you could join us today. We have the privilege of having back with us this Sabbath Phil Van Lanen, who was a missionary in Rwanda during the genocide in the mid-1990s. Phil, I'm so glad that you could join us here again today. I just want to let our audience know today that it's going to be a challenge to get through today. This is where we get into the hard part of the story. So it's appropriate for us to start with a prayer, not just invite God's Holy Spirit to be with us, but to be able to walk through this story, especially for Phil as he's going down some hard memories this morning. Shall we just begin with prayer? Father in heaven, we just want to thank you, Lord, again, that we can be here this morning, Lord, that we can learn together, that we can seek your face. Lord, that we can be reminded of your heart in spite of the fact that we're in a world that is in chaos. And at times we get glimpses of what that chaos looks like, and it's not pretty, and it's scary, and it's hurtful. And Lord, it just causes us to long for the peace that you promise, the peace that's coming, Lord, and for your kingdom to be established, one that's built on love and freedom. So I'm praying today, Lord, for a miracle. Lord, that you would be with us, that you would speak through Phil this morning, that you would guide our conversation, and that you would touch hearts. Lord, that when we finish today, we might realize that in spite of how dark this world can be, there is hope and there's peace and there's light with you. And that while Satan is trying to work so hard to bring about our destruction, Lord, you are working to save humanity. We just thank you for that this morning. Won't you bless? In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Phil, this morning, as we start off, I just want to go back a little bit in our story where we ended last week. You were in Rwanda. You had just passed a scene while helping move a friend where a village had been attacked by some bandits. One of them had thrown a grenade into a home. Some people had actually been killed. And the town had, in a sense, almost rioted. They had become very angry. They were stopping cars. They were
Well, they put up a roadblock and blocked the main highway.
Yeah, it was just not pretty.
No.
And you had been given instructions by a UN official that left you scratching your head because he wasn't like any UN official you'd ever seen before.
No, he wasn't.
And he had sent you down these roads to try and get to your destination. You found yourself out in the middle of nowhere on these tiny little roads, and when we left, you were being chased by what was very likely, in your mind, bandits or angry townspeople.
Yes.
So I wanted to start out today. You're being chased down dirt roads just after the bandits had attacked. What happened?
Well, like I said last week, we finally found this road that he had told us to go on, and it's a nice road, a 2-lane road. It's really nice. Our spirits were high because, you know, we've had so many ups and downs. It's the middle of the night. We're trying to get home, and so this looks like a wonderful road to go down. I look in my rearview mirror and I see these lights, and they are coming fast. I can just tell by a couple of glances that they're gaining on me. So I told the other guys, I said, don't look now, but we're being followed. They looked.
Of course.
What can I say? I sped up at that point. And as I'm going down the road, we come to a bridge. Now, bridges in the backcountry of Rwanda are not like bridges that we have here in the States. What they will do is they will say, okay, we're going to cross the river here. we're going to put a log right across here, and we're going to measure over, and about right here is probably wide enough. We'll put another log. And you have to cross these two logs. I've got a fully loaded Land Cruiser. It's the middle of the night. I hated these bridges even during daylight. I told Ann, the other missionary that was with me, I said, roll your window down. Let's line me up, look out and line that tire up, and I'll roll my window down and I'll try to get my tire lined up on this side, and we'll go across and we edge down onto this. She says, you're good on my side. I looked, I'm good on my side, and we crossed that bridge. The road took a right-hand turn. And now instead of being a 2-lane road, it is a 1-lane road. And so I'm okay with that. I keep going. I'm driving as fast as I possibly can. The guy's catching up. I come to a second bridge. Same thing. You look out your window, I'll look out my window. We lined it up, we crossed that bridge. Now the road is even smaller.
Oh no.
And so I'm okay with it. And I'm just barreling through there and watching this guy, and he is almost on my bumper at this time. By the time I got to the third bridge, he was right behind me, which meant I was not spending a lot of time lining my tires up.
Right, you want to stay in the car.
Going for it, you know.
Yeah.
The road got even smaller. It was now like a 2-lane path.
Walking path.
A walking path.
So you're brushing bushes and stuff on your
Well, yeah, I am. But it gets even worse because I came to the next bridge and it got down to a 1-lane path.
Oh my.
And fortunately I had a brush guard on the front of the Land Cruiser, and there was a rack on the top of it, which helped protect me. I am driving as fast as I could. Bushes, branches, everything are just flying everywhere. I look in my rearview mirror. This guy is no more than 1 foot from my bumper.
Now, if something had happened out there, you're in the middle of nowhere now.
Oh yeah.
There's nowhere to flee.
There's nowhere to go except forward.
Did you feel like you were heading into a trap as you saw the roads get smaller and smaller and smaller?
No, I really didn't. I was only hoping, it's kind of interesting. I told the guys at one time, I said, you guys pray, I'll drive.
Okay.
I didn't realize that at the time that I could pray too and still drive. But I was just so concentrated on staying in front of this guy, whoever he was. I had absolutely no idea. Came to the 5th bridge. We crossed 5 of those bridges that night.
Wow. Came
to the 5th bridge, made the turn, and the road opened up into a nice 2-lane road. And at this point, I just relaxed. I said, okay, I can outrun this guy. Even in a loaded Land Cruiser, I know I can outrun this guy. And I put the pedal all the way down and I was gone. Well, about this time, Aaliyah, our African friend, he said, I know where we are. He said, I used to sell books out here.
Aaliyah was the guy who tried to bum a ride.
He bummed a ride when we were in Gitwe, yes.
So you weren't expecting him to be on this trip, but now
no, we were not expecting him to be on the trip.
Okay.
And so he was with us. And so he says, I know where we're at. He says, there's a big road right in front of us. We take a left, we go down just a little ways, and there'll be a road to the right, which goes through the village. And then we're back on the pavement about 10 to 15 clicks outside of Kigali, which is exactly what the UN observer had told me when I showed him the map. He said, you're going to go around here, you're going to go through this village and hit the tarmac and you'll be fine. So when I got to that road, I was even more confident. And so I stopped. I said, I'm going to find out who's been following me. And I rolled my window down and I turned around, and here's the guy from the UN.
It was him following you.
It was him following us.
Mm.
And I said, hey, good to see you. He said, yeah, he says, I was going to stay back there and observe, but, you know, I've observed so much. I decided I'm going to come with you and get home tonight. He said, but I'm lost. Which
Well, wait a minute. This guy who opened up the map and said, we are here, and this is where you need to go, now says he's lost.
Now says he doesn't know where he's at.
Wow.
Exactly. Oh, it gets better. And I said, that's okay, because we know where we're at now. Follow us. I said, you just go down the road here. There'll be a road off to the right, just a little ways, and it'll take you through the village and you'll be on the highway. He said, okay, I'm right behind you. I take off. I look in my rearview mirror. He comes in and starts following me. So those same headlights are behind me. And we do a little chit-chatting, and we come up to where the road goes to go to the village. And I said, Aaliyah, is this the road? Now Aaliyah says, I have no idea where I'm at. And I'm like, seriously? 5 minutes ago, you knew exactly where you're at. Now you have no idea? And he says, go on a little ways. Maybe it's up here. So we went on. We drove on for 3 or 4 minutes. And after that short amount of time, he said, oh, no. That's the road back there. I said, okay. So I turned around, and this time I'm driving real slow because I've got the UN guy behind me. I want to flag him down and tell him that we missed the turn.
Mm-hmm.
So we get up to the turn. There's no UN guy. I said, okay, well, we sat there for a few minutes. We said, okay, he has to be in front of us. We told him where to go. So he even though we missed the turn, he probably came up to that turn and went that way. So we turned through there, went through the village, and sure enough, we're on the tarmac and feeling really good now because now we are really close to home and back on solid ground. Well, there's a roadblock right outside of Kigali. And we get to that roadblock, and there was a soldier, and Aaliyah talked to him and told him who we were and what we were doing out that late, told him about the problem with the village up the road. And Ann said, ask him about the UN guy. And so Aaliyah talked a little bit, and finally he said, come on, let's go. And they opened the gate for us, and we went through. And Aaliyah sat there, and he was totally silent. And finally, Ann said, Aaliyah, what did the guy say? And Aaliyah said, he told me that he has been at that roadblock since 5 o'clock that evening, and we are the first car that he has seen all night. And now we're all sitting there in silence. And Ann finally says, I think we've seen an angel.
Wow.
And I believe that for several reasons. First of all, the guy's accent, spoke perfect English. Secondly, we rolled out the map, and he pointed exactly where we were. There was no hesitation. And like I said last week, I challenge anybody to do that. it's tough.
Mhm.
Thirdly, were those bridges. You know, he implanted the idea in my mind that was a dangerous route to take. If I had not been followed and I got to that first bridge, I would have said, no way. There is no way I'm going to go forward.
Wow.
I'm going to turn around because I'm not going to risk. It's too great of a risk to cross that bridge, not being able to fully see what condition those logs are in, you know, having a fully loaded car. I would have turned around. But when this guy was behind me, there's only one way to go at this point,
Yes.
and it's onward, Christian soldiers.
He was shepherding you through. Yeah.
There was only one way to go, and that was forward. And I would not have gone forward had he not been behind me.
Wow.
So I think God sent him there to get us through there, to get us around the danger and get us through.
Wow, Phil, that's an incredible story. Now, during your time there, you know, you were there in Rwanda for 3 years.
3 years, yes.
You saw as tensions began to grow. So I wanted to ask you, during your time there, what was behind the tensions growing?
Well, it was basically tribalism.
Okay.
It was two tribes fighting for power, and the best way that I can explain how this culminated is to use an example of childbirth and labor pains. You know, a woman has a contraction, and then there's a space of time where everything is calm, and then there's another contraction, and as the labor goes on, the contractions are greater and they are spaced closer together.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I was seeing in the country. You'd hear about something happening over here, and then there'd be a few weeks where nothing would happen, and then you'd hear something else happening, and it would be a bigger demonstration, and then there'd be less time, and you know, it just kept, the events kept getting bigger, the time between those events kept getting smaller.
Mm.
I told the story about Simone sitting in front of my house.
Yes.
What had happened there was we got a call. We had a person who would go down to the embassy and listen to what the ambassador had to say, and then call us and let us know what was going on. And so we got this call that said the taxis aren't going to be running. They're going to have a demonstration, you know, no big deal. Our clinic director did not want to close the clinic down. And so he told me, go get the girls, go bring our workers over here. So I did it. On the way over, I saw a couple roadblocks being set up, and it, for some reason, it just didn't register in my mind, you know,
What was going on?
that I should probably turn around and go back home. So I get over there, we get loaded up. I've got all these workers in my car. The majority of them were Tutsis.
Your workers.
The workers, the majority of our workers that I had with me were Tutsis.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm driving back, and one of the guys said, they're setting up a roadblock in front of you. And just immediately, I had hundreds of people around the Land Cruiser, and they were beating on the car, and I'm trying to turn around, and I've got my foot on the gas, one foot on the clutch, and I'm making my turn, and I'm getting ready to punch it and get out of there. I see this little boy in front of my truck, and had I kept going, I would have hit him. And all I did, pushed in the clutch, which revved up the engine. He jumped out of the way, and I popped the clutch, and we were gone. But in the meantime, they had taken a club and knocked out my backside window. And so I went up to one of our workers' house, and they said, you can stay with us today. And so that's where I hid out all day.
You use some words in your story. I want to take some of these words. The march, the demonstration, riots, roadblocks, angry mob, breaking out your windows. This is like the news today.
It's exactly like the news. It's exactly like the news. And one of the things that once we got back home, one of the things that I found that sort of disappointed me was the apathy that was taking place in the here in the States. When I talked to people, it was like, well, that's happening over there. It'll never. I can't tell you how many people said it will never happen here in the States.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, you are so wrong.
I want to spend some time at the end of our story today unpacking that, because I think that what you're telling us right now, you have some insights. In a sense, what you went through is, it gives us an idea of what could be coming our way. Right. And I want to spend some time on that. So
I'm going to back up here, and I'm going to go back and finish telling this story.
Okay.
So the house I was at was one of our workers at the clinic, and she had six little boys, and so I played with these little boys all day long. And her husband would go out and he would wander around and come back and let us know what was going on. Every now and then, I would go on. This whole roadblock and demonstration was happening about a block from where they lived. So I could go out and peek my head over the fence, and I could see what was going on. And they had like riot police coming down, shooting tear gas at these people, trying to break them up. And it was pretty interesting. Later on that afternoon, this lady's husband came in and he says, okay, it's all clear, you can go home. And I said, okay, I'm ready to go. He said, but wait. He said, you have to have a meal with us. He said, I don't want to send you out to die on an empty stomach. So
were you laughing then?
Well, yeah, just I was okay then.
Kind of didn't know what was coming yet, huh?
I still didn't know what was out there. So we ate together, and I got in my Land Cruiser and headed for home. I think I drove. That was the fastest I've made it across town and back to the compound that I've ever done. The roadblock down the road where they had attacked me, they still had that set up. And I literally put it in four-wheel drive as I was going down there. And I thought to myself, buddy, you either open that gate and let me through, or I'm going over the top of this roadblock, because it was just a bunch of tires. And just as I got there, he opened it up and I raced through, and I was home. Well, when I got home, I called the embassy, because they knew that the word had gotten out that they've got an American across town stuck over there. The embassy was real good about keeping track of where people were, And so I called the guy and I said, listen, what was in that message? And so he says, okay, Phil, I'm going to read it word for word. And he read it to me, and I'm like, okay. Had I known this, I would have never gone out. And I said, can I be a liaison for the people on our clinic, on our compound, and come down and hear firsthand what the ambassador has to say. And he says, oh yeah, no problem. We'll put you on the list. So from that time on, I would go down, and it was actually a couple days later, I got a call to go down, and the ambassador filled us in on everything. And then when we were done, I got all our missionaries together on the compound, and I said, okay, here's what the ambassador had to say. And my last statement was, folks, I don't know what's going to happen, but whatever happens next is going to be really, really big. Yeah. And it was bigger than even I imagined.
Yeah. So with that, I want to ask you, this was about April.
It's about April, yeah.
And that's when all hell broke loose in Rwanda.
Yes.
What triggered that, and what followed that immediately?
Well, this was something that had been planned. There were a group of extremists in the country who did not want to share power. And so they had everything planned out. They had lists of people that they were going to kill. I mean, it was very systematic on how they did everything. And it was April 6th. And we had a missionary, his name was Ranjan. We used to play music together on Wednesday nights. He'd come over to my house. Only time in my life where I've had a house with a garage. So I had a garage band. That's a joke, by the way. But we would play our guitars and sing, and so we're out there just jamming on this Wednesday night. We hear this huge boom, and we both stopped and we went in the house, and we're like, what's going on here? You know, was that thunder? What was it? One of our workers, our European workers, was friends with several of the UN observers. And she called me and she said, my friends at the UN have said the president's plane was just shot down.
Wow.
And we had no other information than that. Hung up the phone. About 5 minutes later, the guy from the embassy calls. He says, Phil, president's plane has just shot down. We're telling everybody to hunker down. Do not leave your house. And he says, because we don't know what's going to happen. So that night we went to bed not knowing what would happen. At 5 o'clock the next morning, the girl that worked for me calls me up. And she said, Phil, the president's plane has been shot down. Well, we were also told, don't tell anybody, don't spread this information out. And she said, we just heard the president's plane. And so I said, okay, thanks for the information. I did not tell her that I already knew.
Sure.
I went back to bed, and Sandra and I were laying there in bed thinking, man, what in the world is going to happen next? Well, it didn't take us very long. About 5:15, 5:30, somewhere in that neighborhood, all hell broke loose. And there was an explosion, and then there was just gunfire, small arms, machine guns, anything you can imagine went off. It was just total chaos. And I went and grabbed the kids, brought them into the hallway, went back and got a couple mattresses and put over the top of them in case there might be stray bullets coming through. That wouldn't have given them much protection, but I was trying to do as much as I could. And then the phone rings. And so I crawl out into the kitchen, and of all the missionaries on the compound, I had lived in Rwanda the longest. I had not been the longest missionary of all our missionaries, but for the ones on the compound, I had lived in the country the longest. And so they looked up to me for, and they knew I was keeping track of the politics and all that thing. So it was Ranjan. He calls, he says, "Phil, what's going on?" I said, "Well, it sounds like a war."
Wow.
And we talked for a bit, hung up. I went out, I crawled over to the front door and looked out the window, and you could see tracers going over the compound. And that battle lasted for a little bit. And after it was over, I went out and checked on all the missionaries to make sure everybody was fine. And the sequence of events. There was a couple more battles during the day. I got a call from the girl that worked for me at one point, and she knew people who were in the RPF, which was the Tutsi rebels who were stationed there in town. There were 600 rebel soldiers stationed in town to protect the delegates that were in town for the peace talks. So she told me that she had gotten a call from one of her friends that told her, "We're going into the fight because they are slaughtering Tutsis."
Oh boy.
And that's pretty much the last I heard of her. We lost communications at that point. So when it became light, we had a student missionary living in an apartment across from our house. We pulled her into the house. We had, each one of us were advised at Missions Institute before we left to get a shortwave radio. So I bought this really nice shortwave radio. It ran on C batteries. You cannot find a single C battery in Rwanda because the people believe it's a small battery and it doesn't hold much electricity. They like the D batteries, the bigger ones, because they hold more electricity.
Oh, no.
I had run my batteries completely dead, and they were on the list. I'd just come back from furlough, and they were on the list of things that I was going to buy while I was on furlough, and I didn't buy them. So now I bring this student missionary over. I set her down at the table, and to give her something to do, I bring this shortwave in. My shortwave radio, as expensive as it was, I had a very hard time picking up BBC and Voice of America. All the other missionaries, their cheaper little radios could pick up BBC and Voice of America, but they couldn't pick up the two-way communications. We had the church had a specific band that they could use for their two-way communications. And I could dial into that and I could hear that perfectly. So I sat her down at the table and I said, everything that happens in this, that you hear, you write it down. And if it's anything important, you come get me and let me know. I went and told the other missionaries, I said, I can, because communication, we had lost, we didn't know what was happening with our other missionaries. And so that wasn't, communication is important.
Yeah, when you've got nowhere to go.
Yes. And so I told the other missionaries, I said, okay, I'm monitoring the Adventist channel, but if the power goes out, we've totally lost everything, I said, because my batteries are dead. And shortly thereafter, the power went out. And I was at home and the power goes out. The radio keeps working. I take the batteries out of it. The radio keeps working.
Oh, so it's not connected to any power.
Not connected to anything, and it keeps working. And our power was out for about a half an hour, but that radio kept working for a half an hour.
Wow.
And yeah, don't tell me God wasn't
For real.
in that.
Yeah, you don't unplug a lamp and watch its light still burn. Wow.
Well, at some point in time, we had a missionary living about a block away from us. Our union treasurer also lived about a block away from us. Well, we were hearing on the radio that there were some important decisions that needed to be made. And our missionary who lived a block away from us had a two-way radio. So three of us decided that we needed to go down to his house. So when those important decisions were being made, we could be a part of it. So we walked down to his house, and while we were waiting for the time to get on the radio, we decided to walk across the street and check on Pastor Soraya. We went across the street and we talked to him, and on our way out, he handed one of the guys, his name was Ron, he handed him the key to the front gate. And he says, if you ever need to come down here, you can just get in and don't have to have me come outside.
Mm-hmm.
So we went out, we went across the street to our other missionary's house. And at that point, Ron says, I've got to go back to the compound to check on something. So he took off to the compound. While he's gone, there's a group of neighborhood thugs that break into the house right next to where Pastor Soraya is living. I told Ranjan, I said, we have got to go and stand in front of Pastor Soraya's house. Ranjan was a little bit apprehensive about it, and it's like, I'm not sure if I want to face the mob, I said, no,
Yeah.
we've got to do this. About that time, Ron comes back, and I told Ron what was going on, that there was a group of people in that house. I said, we've got to go across to Pastor Soraya's house and stand in front of his house. And so we did. The three of us then went across. Ron unlocked the gate. We all milled around the front gate, making it look like we lived there. Sure enough, those guys got done looting that house, and they came walking down the street. And as they passed us, they just laughed and said, you'll be gone soon. We'll come back and get your house. But we were able to keep them from going into the house at that point.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, they probably would have hurt Pastor Soraya and his wife.
Yeah.
So after they passed, we locked up the gate, went back across, had our communication with, on the two-way radio, made our decisions. We started back then towards the compound. And as we did, a soldier came up and stopped me. And he says, I want your identity card. I said, I don't have any identity on me. I don't walk around carrying my identity. I spoke French. The other two guys that were with me spoke Kinyarwanda.
Mm-hmm.
And so Ron, who spoke Kinyarwanda, he started talking to this guy in Kinyarwanda. And they talked for a while, and I'm trying to get Ron to say, what's he saying? What's he saying? Ron wouldn't tell me. So after a while, I just was like, I've had enough of this. I'm leaving. And I turned around and walked off. Ron came behind me. And the other guy came behind him. And I turned to glance, and the other guy gave this soldier a handful of money. And we hustled up to the compound and got inside the compound. No sooner we were inside the compound, this guy unloaded his gun in the air. And when we got out, it wasn't until we were down in Burundi that I asked Ron, what was this guy saying? And Ron said, he's saying, you guys aren't afraid. I'm going to make you afraid. He was threatening us.
Wow.
And, but I didn't know about that till afterwards.
So he was playing a power game with you.
Yeah. Yeah, he was trying to frighten us. And I didn't know what was going on, so I just turned around and walked away. And Ron said, if you had not had the courage to walk away, we may have been in some trouble.
Yeah. Gun down right there.
But I don't know if it's courage or just stupidity, you know.
Well, you didn't know.
I didn't know what was going on. I just turned around and walked away, you know.
Now, as things were getting worse and worse, I mean, it was just getting darker and darker every day. There came a time where the embassy said there needs to be an evacuation now.
Yes.
Tell us about that. I want to know, first off, before you get into the story of that, how did you feel about being told that you were going to have to leave, and why?
That was tough. I love these people. You know, I had a gardener and a housewife that were family, and I'm going to have to leave them behind. So it was a tough decision, but I had to get my family out of there. You know, I had to protect my family and get them out of there. That was the number one priority. There was absolutely no way we could stay.
Yeah.
And
so you have a real mix of emotions going through you. This isn't like, oh, great, we're going to get out of the country. This is like, what are we leaving? But these are family. These are friends. These are what's going to happen to them. Are we being cowards? You know,
I've asked myself that many times. It's a question I've struggled with for years. Yeah. But we finally, there were several problems with evacuating, because one of the things, when this group of dignitaries came in for the peace talk, they put them in the Parliament building. The Parliament building, we could see it from our compound, sat on a hill overlooking the direct road to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no way we could drive to the airport. That road was totally off the plan. So we had to drive, they had to find another route for us to get out of the country. And so that took some time for the embassy to figure out, how are we going to get all these people out of our country, you know, out of the country. And I'll tell you, we evacuated Sunday morning. Saturday night was an extremely tough night because it was just peacefully quiet. And I kind of roamed the compound, just, you know, wondering, you know, what's going to happen to these people. You know, we had no idea we had no idea the full extent of it. But Sunday morning, we went over to the ambassador's house. We got the UN came, brought a troop carrier and escorted us over to the ambassador's house. And so we were all supposed to drive out at that point. Well, there were several of us that didn't have enough gas to get out of the country. So that becomes another problem. So we decided that those that had gas would leave immediately and go, and those that didn't have gas would go to the embassy and fill up and then leave from the embassy. And one of the things that happened while we were at the embassy was I was outside talking with the ambassador and his wife, and there was one other person, I don't remember who it was. And we were outside in the lawn, you know, just talking. That, and you may wonder, well, why are you outside in the, you know, you've got fighting going on?
Pretty much.
It's interesting when all these battles come. It's almost, it's like the new normal. You hear that? Oh, this is the new normal. After a while, you kind of get used to it and you let your guard down a little bit. You're not so much on high alert. I will back up and tell you a story. This is before we evacuated. I had gone up to one of our other missionaries, and he lived on the house above where we lived. Because Rwanda is just a bunch of hills. Our compound was kind of on a slope and kind of terraced. And I had my banana grove between the two houses, you know, between his house and my house. And I was up there talking to him, and there was a battle that started. And as that battle started to intensify, I said, okay, it's time for me to get home. I didn't want to walk down the pathway. I wanted to try to keep under some sort of cover. So I thought, well, I'll go through the bananas.
Yeah.
And so I'm walking through the bananas, and overhead, a mortar goes off, and I can hear the shrapnel just coming down and whizzing down around me. And it startled me, and I was just getting ready to go down this little embankment, and I slipped and fell. Now, you might think that I was upset about the mortar. I wasn't. I was upset because I just put on a clean pair of Levi's, and now those Levi's are muddy, and that's what upset me.
So you really had just gotten used to all of this to the point where you would adjust.
To the point where we felt comfortable speaking out in the front yard.
Yeah.
Well, at one point while we were sitting around talking, I hear a shot. I feel a bullet go from my shoulder down to my waist. When I say feel,
Felt it.
I felt it as it went by. That's how close it was. And I said, guys, they're shooting at us. We probably should get in. And so everybody headed in. I was the last one in line because of where I was standing. I came around the corner of the house. I saw the ambassador go in. I saw his wife go in. And I'm heading to the door. And I feel 3 more bullets pass my shoulder. At this point, I hit the ground. And I start crawling on all fours. And I come to the door and I'm crawling on all fours, and everybody's sitting there looking at me like, what's going on with you? Why are you down on the ground? But yeah, that did scare me just a little bit.
So you were being targeted there. I mean, somebody was really trying to hit you. How do you have 4 bullets come so close that you feel them if they're not aiming at you?
They were bad shots. They were probably aiming at somebody else, and they didn't know how to shoot.
Okay.
I don't know. I never thought that somebody was actually shooting at me. I guess they were.
Sure seems like it.
It may have been. You just don't think about things. I mean, okay, the bullets, maybe somebody is shooting at me, but I didn't waste much time dwelling upon it,
Sure.
you know.
The whole new world, man.
Oh yeah, it's different. So anyway, it was finally our turn to drive out, and boy, we get to the embassy. We saw a lot of things going to the embassy, and we get filled up with gas, and we start driving out. As we're driving out, we can hear shots above us, and we can see bullets hitting on. So they're shooting over the top of us as we're driving out of town. We finally get to this last checkpoint, and it felt like we were there for 45 minutes. People say, oh, it's only 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but boy, it sure felt like a long
Felt
time.
like eternity.
And there was probably 1,000 people there. They were all milling around. And I say, God made me stupid sometimes, you know. There was a guy with a short little, it looked like a club. And he was walking around holding this thing. And I looked at that and I thought, man, that's stupid. You're going to have a club, make it a long club so you can get some leverage in there, you know. I learned later that he was carrying a hand grenade.
A grenade, yes.
One of the things that they would do was take wood and put nails in them and put them under your tires. And so when you drive forward now, you got a flat tire. And I saw this guy in my rearview mirror getting ready to do that, headed for the car, and boom, just like that, there was a soldier from out of nowhere told him, no, don't do that. And he backed off and didn't put it there. And
Okay, Phil.
then they drove this truck by. The Rwandese, they cleaned up their messes. And they drove this truck by, and it was just piled full of bodies. And in the back was looked like a little girl, a bullet hole right in her forehead. Couldn't have been much over 10 years old. Yeah, I'll never forget that. And they were dumping them in the river to clean them up.
Why would they put
When we got out, there was a CNN reporter that was doing a report and saw all these bodies laying around. And she said, look at this. These people are defiant. They're just leaving these bodies lay out here. And I shook my head and said, no, there's nobody left to bury them. You know, this is how bad it was. We were able to drive out. One thing happened. We were the next to the last convoy to leave. We got down to Burundi. One of our missionaries found out that they had lost their passports.
Oh no.
So now that means a one-way trip back to the United States. And they put us up in a little house. And we spent the night. 7 o'clock the next morning, they call us and say, you got to be to the airport. We're flying you out of here. And oh, by the way, we found these people's passports. The last convoy that came out stopped at the exact place that we had stopped at. And what we figured is that we had stopped to take a break, and this guy had gotten out of his car and his passports had fallen out.
Here.
The last convoy stopped at that exact same place, and somebody found those passports there.
Wow.
So now we were able to, travel on. So we went down from there. We went to the airport in Burundi. They had several hundred Marines there. that they had flown in to get us out. And
How were the Marines responding when you told them what you had seen? How did the Marines take it?
They were so upset. It would not have taken much to stop this. And they wanted to go in and stop it. You tell a Marine what's going on, and he'd get tears in his eyes. And you could see, let us in there, we can stop this. And those guys were great.
But they weren't allowed to go.
They were not allowed to go.
No one was allowed to stop it.
No one was allowed to stop it. No one wanted to call it genocide.
Why?
And then you have to do something. If you call it genocide, there is an ethical response that you have to go and do something, and nobody wanted to do it. Rwanda had no oil. Rwanda had no uranium, no diamonds. The only thing Rwanda had was people. And obviously they weren't worth enough to do anything.
So this is a sick picture of leaders, because the soldiers, the Marines, they wanted to go in. We know that the UN people on the ground there, they wanted to go in, but it was hierarchy saying you can't.
The hierarchy didn't want to get involved.
And it was easy for them because they weren't connected with these people.
They weren't connected.
That's a heartbreaking story.
The guy who was in charge of the UN did everything he could possibly do to try to stop this. And at every turn, somebody was blocking him. It was
heart-wrenching.
Yes, very much so.
So there's no way to leave the country, no matter what background you are, whether you're American or you were Belgian or you were French, any of these people that are in there, for whatever reasons, there was no good feeling about leaving. You feel like you're a failure.
I don't think a whole lot of people walked out of there and said, I'm glad to be out. Most of the people who were in there,
they wanted to help.
They wanted to help, yes. And unfortunately, they were not allowed to.
Phil, when you got back with the Marines and you guys were at the, I believe it was the airport at that point, wasn't it?
Yes.
You were approached by a reporter that asked you this question: why would God permit this to happen? He asked that to you.
Yes. Guy's name was William Schmidt, and he started talking to me and asking me to tell the story. And at one point he said, why would God allow this to happen? And I said, listen, there are two forces in this world. There's the force of good and the force of evil. And I said, as hard as God is trying to save people, Satan is working equally as hard to try to destroy them.
Mm.
And it was the only answer I had. It's a complicated question, why do good things?
Why do bad things happen to good people?
Good people. It is a complicated theological question, and that's the simplest answer that I've been able to come up with.
Yeah. When a kingdom of God is built on freedom and it's built on the motivation of love,
mm-hmm.
that means that there's some risk taken. When God gives humanity freedom to choose for themselves, he's taking a risk that we may make the wrong decisions, and we've sure made a whole lot of wrong decisions. And you were basically responding to him that this didn't happen because God wanted this to happen. This happened because an enemy has done this.
Yes.
And good people got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Good people suffered in this evil that was happening.
Yes. Very much so.
Phil, could you talk to us a little bit about the aftermath? You know, we're kind of winding down in time here, but I would really like to talk about the aftermath, the apathy, and if you, because you were personally there, any insights into what's happening in the United States right now with the rioting and things? Are there any parallels in what's happening today? Could you talk to us about the aftermath, the apathy, and any parallels?
When we finally got back to the States, there were a few people that were concerned. They were mostly concerned about us. This is a terrible thing that happened, but it's
it was
far
over there.
away. It's over there.
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many people said, this will never happen in America. You do not realize how fragile our peace is.
Yeah.
It took less than 24 hours for that country to go from peace to total anarchy.
Yeah.
And I mean, once people found out that nobody would stop them, they went crazy.
Yeah.
I heard an interview not too long ago. One of the Rwandese said, the devil took over our country. And it was very much so. Parallels between what I saw there and what I'm seeing here. First of all, the labor pains I talked about. Incidents becoming closer together, and those incidents becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's happening in our country today.
Yeah.
You know, people being divided, people not respecting other people. And that's causing this big divide, because we can't, you know, I don't respect you because you're a different tribe than I am.
Yeah.
Is no different than I don't respect you because you're a different color than I am.
Or a different religion.
Or a different religion.
Political persuasion.
Exactly. And we have all these divides, and they're becoming even greater and greater as we go on. And
I think
so when I look at what's happening in the news today, I'm like, yeah.
I can't help but think about the story of Jesus when he was being led to the crucifixion, and you read the background in there of what was going on. Satan was working up the emotions and the tensions and the passions of men that under normal circumstances might not have acted that way. There's like this underlying seething unrest, fury, anger, distrust that's growing. This is what was happening in Rwanda.
Yes.
And climaxed in that. This is what we're seeing happening today because of years of injustices not being met, and a myriad of other reasons.
Right.
I see on the news, this rioting and stuff is not usually coming from the protesters. This is coming from anarchists that have filled a vacuum. Were you telling me the other day a guy walking down the street nude and just starts attacking people, and those people return, beat him up?
Yes.
Just senseless. Like they don't even know each other. There's no good reason. They're just fighting because they feel like it.
Yeah, this guy came down and started attacking people. And the people turned around and beat the stuffings out of him. And the news spun it as this guy was being attacked. But if you watch the video, he had attacked them first.
Yeah.
You know,
it's like a bunch of rabid dogs.
A bunch of rabid dogs. And interesting to say that, another documentary that I was watching. They were talking to the prisoners, the guys that are in prison now for the atrocities that they committed. And this one guy, he said, we were like wild beasts, and we became like rabid dogs. And it said a rabid dog will bite anything that's around him. We just totally lost control.
Mm.
And you get a mob together, and they just
Senseless.
it's senseless. Yeah.
I did some digging this morning before we began this interview, just out of curiosity to know about how many people had died there. And because it was tricky to try and figure out the number, but the estimates were somewhere between 600,000 and 800,000, some up as high as 1 million people that were killed. The census that had been taken prior to that said that there were about 500,000 to 600,000 Tutsis in the country, which means they were almost completely decimated. But there were also thousands of Hutus that were killed by other Hutus.
This was these guys would go door to door, killing the Tutsis, but they would go up to a Hutu and say, "Are you a Hutu or a Tutsi?" And the guy would say, "Well, I'm a Hutu." Give him a machete and say, "Here, go kill somebody." And the guy would say, I'm not going to kill anybody. I'm a Christian. I'm not going to kill anybody. They would kill him. They went to a priest. We heard this story right as we were leaving, that there was a priest of the Catholic Church nearby. They went to the priest and said, "Are you a Hutu or a Tutsi?" He said, "I am a Christian." Wrong answer. They killed him. And so there were many Hutus who were killed as well, because they would not. They stood up for what was right. They would not kill another person. And
so people were being killed for doing right.
Yes. If you don't join us, we'll kill you. And
this sounds like Revelation.
There was the mayor of Butari. They went to him. He had a Tutsi wife. There was a lot of intermarriage in the country also. He was a Hutu. His wife was a Tutsi. They went to him and they said, "Tell us where your wife's parents are hiding, or we'll kill your wife." So you have a choice. You can either have your wife or protect your wife's family. And I don't know what happened, but I do know that he was given that ultimatum.
Just makes absolute no sense. There's not even words to describe it. It's more than senseless. It's absolutely satanic.
Yes.
Satanic.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
I think about what the book of Revelation says about the struggles that will be happening in the last days, and the death decree coming out to force people to, you do this or you're, there's a lot of parallels here. I want to touch on a couple of Bible passages here, and I want to end on some positive ones. Because the fact is, we do live in a world that's filled with trouble. And while in this country, many people have been protected from that, it's not going to be that way forever. And there's going to be a reality check one of these days where we're all going to be in the same world as some of these darkest things that have happened. That's what the Bible says. And we're going to be tested at that time as to whether or not we trust God with our life or not. And we may die trusting God with our life. But we've been promised the resurrection will be sure. One of these places, Matthew chapter 24, and this is just a couple of passages, a couple of verses. "There will be great tribulation, such as has not occurred since the beginning of the world, nor that will ever be seen again. And unless these days are cut short, no life would survive. But for the sake of God's people, those days will be cut short. I was thinking about the question that the reporter was, or the statement the reporter was making about the sloppiness of the mess, and your response that there's nobody left to bury them.
Right.
Very similar picture there. It's painful. Jesus repeatedly told his disciples in the New Testament that in this world there was going to be trouble, and that we should take heart, that we would overcome the world. He gives promises of protection, promises of peace. I read a statement the other day. I think it was on Facebook. One of our church members posted it, basically saying, it was like a missionary person. They were saying, I look at my life as being invincible. I am invincible. I'm immortal until my work is done. And that's really what it is. When our work is done, we've not been promised that we're going to not face troubles. And I know there's a prosperity gospel out there. I know there's so much, especially in American and European culture within Christianity, that you come to God and you have, this wonderful life of wealth and prosperity, and all your problems go away. And that's just not biblical Christianity. We've been promised peace. We've been promised an abundant life, but it's an abundant life that comes with peace as we're going through storms. It comes from an abundant life of knowing Jesus, even when we're faced with death. I want to share a couple passages about that too. One of them here is in the New Testament, Philippians chapter 4, verses 4 through 7. Paul is talking to the church in Philippi, and he says, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all, for the Lord is near. Don't be anxious about anything, but in every situation by prayer and petition and thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And then he promises that the peace of God will then follow, and that transcends all understanding, and that it will guide and protect and guard our hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Another passage is found in Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3. This is a promise. You will keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is fixed on you, because he trusts you. I have read so many stories in history about the martyrs, people who have died for their faithfulness to Christ, died because they chose not to do the wrong thing, and they had peace.
Yes.
And I've wondered, I remember as a kid, there was a time I was so terrified, Lord, what happens if I had to go to the stake? What would happen if I was to go to the guillotine, or I was to be faced with the firing squad? My life was at stake here because of the truth. What would I do? Would I be strong enough to stand? And yet I look at this promise, and he's like, you just need to keep your eyes on me and focus on me. And when that time comes, if that time comes, my strength will carry you through that time. Perfect peace to those whose minds are anchored, who are fixed on him because we trust him, because we trust his heart. Another promise here, Psalms 119, 165, abundant peace belongs to those who love God's instructions, and nothing can cause them to stumble because they love his instructions. They're not excusing that. They know that they're walking with him with all of their heart, and they're fully trusting themselves to what he is going to allow to happen in their life. And they know that they're going to be secure in him.
There was people would ask, one of the things they'd ask me is, were you scared?
Were you?
And for the most part, I would have to say no. But there were a few times, and because I was running on adrenaline for 4 days, there were a few times when fear did come and grip me. And to the point where I was paralyzed. And I started to repeat the 23rd Psalm. And I did not have to go very far. Yea, though I walk through the valley of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. When I got to that point, there was this peace that just flooded over me. And I was able to continue doing the things I needed to do.
Wow.
And that happened several times. And each and every time that that happened, I started going through the 23rd Psalm and got to that verse. That's as far as I had to go. And this peace would come over me.
Phil, that is standing on a promise. One of my great concerns for our church today, for my children, for our youth, for our grandmas and grandpas, for our parents, is that we learn how to stand on those promises and to live by that faith. Not to think that church is about the music or the kind of sermon or whether or not I'm having fun when I do this, that, or the other thing. Although there's great sermons, there's beautiful music, and there's lots of fun, in the Christian gathering. But that Christianity is about the anchoring in God's word and knowing him, because life isn't always beautiful and pretty. And I worry, like this is something that has kept me up many nights since becoming a pastor, is, Lord, am I preaching it straight? Am I on the right path with this? Am I walking with you in such a way where your spirit can speak so that our people can learn to anchor themselves on you and not focus on the things that are really peripheral, because the hard times are coming. And when the hard times come, that's when you discover, unfortunately, sometimes too late, where you've anchored your hope, whether you're really a real Christian or not. I guess I want to close today with this. There's so much here, and I know there's so many stories that you could still share. And I know that some of them would be really even more challenging to share. As you and I have talked about this a number of times, you've broken down in tears and wept. And I know this is really hard. And I really appreciate that you've shared with us, that you've walked us through this, that we've hopefully can learn some lessons from this on how we're facing today. I really want to take the time to make an appeal to everyone who's listening today to please don't waste the time when things are good, because hard times are going to come. And it's easy to say, there's no God, I don't need to worry about this when everything's going good. But when things start to fall apart and hell breaks loose, that's when you're challenged. That's when we find out what we're really made of. And only God can prepare us for that. And he's crying out to his people to come to him today, to get to know him today, to know that peace which will carry us through the valley of the shadow of death, that God can use us to do mighty things in a time where the rest of the world might be cowering. This is really a time to have some soul searching and to make sure that our lives are right with God. Phil, just thank you so much for being with us today. Why don't we close with a prayer? Father in heaven, I thank you, Lord, for your word. I thank you for your care. I thank you for the miracles that you did in Phil's life and in many of these missionaries' lives. Lord, I thank you for the salvation that you offer, and that even though many lives were lost, when resurrection day comes, they're going to see you face to face and everything will be made right. Lord, I pray that as we look at our world today, at what's happening, and as things seem to be falling apart right now. Lord, things may very well get much better soon. They might not. But it's my concern that, Lord, when things get better, that we'll forget the lessons that we learn in the hard times like this. Please help us to not forget those lessons. Help us to grow together, to grow closer to you, to take very seriously the work that you've called us to in this life that we live in. Thank you, Lord, for the hope that we have in you. Thank you for the promise that your angel will walk with us, that you will protect our souls, and that no matter what comes our way, for good or for bad, you will be there with us. And that for eternity, we'll be living in a world made right. Whereas what we see all around us is a world in chaos. Thank you, Father, for the hope that's in you. Thank you for the cross. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, thank you.